Puerto Vallarta food costs versus USA and Canada, the complete 2026 grocery and dining price guide. Real 2026 grocery and restaurant price data. Not guesses, comparing Puerto Vallarta and the rest of Mexico to the United States and Canada, plus a monthly food budget planner built for snowbirds, retirees, and travelers. By PromovisionPV, Puerto Vallarta and Riviera Nayarit Travel Guide, updated August 2026. In this guide, the big picture, grocery cost index, item-by-item grocery prices, dining out, restaurant price comparison, why food costs less in Puerto Vallarta, what actually costs more here, monthly food budget planner, eating healthy on a local budget, where to shop, Mercados, supermarkets, and Tianguis. Frequently asked questions. Every snowbird, retiree, and long-stay traveler asks some version of the same question before booking a flight to Banderas Bay. Is food actually cheaper in Puerto Vallarta than back home? The honest answer is yes, meaningfully, but not uniformly, and not the cartoonish everything costs $1 version some blogs still repeat. Below is a grounded, source-backed 2026 comparison of grocery and restaurant prices in Mexico versus the United States and Canada, drawn from Numbeo's cost of living database and cross-checked against real market experience in Puerto Vallarta. If you're planning stay in Zona Romántica, Versalles, Nuevo Vallarta, or anywhere along Riviera Nayarit, this is the number-driven breakdown to budget from. 47% lower grocery prices in Mexico versus the USA, Numbeo, 2026. 40% lower grocery prices in Mexico versus Canada, Numbeo, 2026. 50% lower cost for a mid-range restaurant meal for two versus the US. The big picture, grocery cost index, Mexico versus USA versus Canada. Numbeo scores grocery affordability on a 0-100 index where New York City sits near 100. As of 2026, Mexico's National Grocery Index sits far below both its North American neighbors, and that gap holds even in a resort market like Puerto Vallarta, where prices run a little higher than inland Mexican cities, but remain well under US and Canadian averages. Numbeo Grocery Price Index, 2026, 100 equals most expensive globally. Country Grocery Price Index versus Mexico. Mexico 38 to 46 baseline. Canada 65 to 71, 40% higher. United States 72 to 74, 47% higher. Zoomed into Puerto Vallarta specifically, Numbeo's city-level comparison against a comparable U.S. coastal market, Newport Beach, California, shows groceries running roughly 42.6% higher in the U.S. city, with overall cost of living, rent included, about 72.6% higher. That's the pattern travelers should expect. Puerto Vallarta is not the cheapest town in Mexico. Guadalajara and inland cities undercut it, but it remains dramatically more affordable than comparable U.S. or Canadian beach towns. Reality check. Mexico's food inflation has been running hotter than the general CPI in 2026, with food and non-alcoholic beverages climbing close to 7% year-over-year per INEGI data. The savings gap versus the US and Canada is still wide, but it has narrowed slightly compared to a few years ago. Budget with a buffer, not a 2019 mental price list. Item-by-item grocery prices. What you'll actually pay. Index numbers are useful for the big picture, but travelers plan trips around real items in a real cart. The pattern is consistent. Fresh produce, proteins, rice, and dairy run 20 to 95% cheaper in Mexico, while a small handful of items, bread, bananas, occasionally land cheaper north of the border due to local agricultural subsidies and supply chains. In practice, a traveler cooking mostly Mexican staples, rice, beans, corn tortillas, chicken, seasonal fruit, seafood, will see the deepest savings, while someone insisting on an all-imported pantry will see the gap shrink considerably. Dining out, restaurant price comparison. Restaurant savings track even more consistently than groceries, which is part of why Puerto Vallarta has built such a strong reputation as a food destination for North American travelers who can eat out nightly without the US or Canadian bill shock. Source: Numbeo Cost of Living Comparison, Mexico versus Canada and US Benchmarks, 2026. Restaurant item Mexico, Canada, USA, typical. A mid-range dinner for two in Puerto Vallarta's Zona Romántica or Marina Vallarta. Think fresh ceviche and aguachile, grilled seafood, or a proper mole. Regularly comes in near or under half of what the same quality meal costs in a comparable U.S. coastal city and noticeably less than a Canadian equivalent. Street food and local fondas push the savings even further. See our full breakdown of street food across Banderas Bay. Why food costs less in Puerto Vallarta. Local growing regions. Jalisco and Nayarit sit inside some of Mexico's most productive agricultural corridors, so produce, corn, and beans travel short distances from farm to market instead of crossing a border. Lower labor costs. Restaurant labor, from kitchen staff to servers, costs a fraction of U.S. or Canadian wages, which keeps menu prices down without necessarily lowering food quality. Local currency pricing. Peso-denominated staples are insulated from the exchange rate swings that make imported, dollar-priced goods feel volatile. Direct-to-market channels. Weekly Tianguis and neighborhood Mercados cut out several layers of distribution that inflate U.S. and Canadian supermarket pricing. Monthly food budget planner for Puerto Vallarta. These figures build directly on our detailed Puerto Vallarta cost of living guide for snowbirds and Mexico cost of living breakdown, narrowed down specifically to food. We provide information and resources for visitors to Puerto Vallarta, areas of the Riviera Nayarit, and other destinations in both states of Jalisco and Nayarit. Find variety of content, including articles, blog posts, videos, photos, descriptions, and interviews, all of which are designed to help visitors plan their trip, including attractions, restaurants, and events. Follow PromovisionPV.com.